It is important to designate an employee representative. This should be the foreman or employee on site who knows the most about the job site. Before OSHA arrives, this person should already be identified. This person will be responsible for escorting the inspector. In addition, you should select a meeting space for opening and closing conferences with OSHA. This meeting space could be an office trailer or a nearby building. An employee representative will be allowed to attend opening and closing conferences as well as the walk-around inspection. The opening conference is the first thing that occurs during the OSHA inspection. During the opening conference, the compliance officer will explain why OSHA selected the workplace for inspection and describe the scope of the inspection, walk-around procedures, employee representation, and employee interviews. The employer then selects a representative to accompany the compliance officer during the inspection. An authorized representative of the employees, if any, also has the right to go along. In any case, the compliance officer will consult privately with a reasonable number of employees during the inspection. If the inspection affects employees of other employers working at the site, the inspection may include other employee representatives. Make sure to record the opening conference and closing conference using an audio device or your cell phone. The inspection and walk-around occur following the opening conference. During the inspection, the compliance officer and the representatives will walk through the portions of the workplace covered by the inspection, inspecting for hazards that could lead to employee injury or illness. The compliance officer will also review worksite injury and illness records and the posting of the official OSHA poster. Always make sure that inspectors are wearing the appropriate PPE for the job site. Most inspectors bring their own PPE, but be prepared to provide them with the necessary gear if they don't have it. Hold the OSHA inspector to the same requirements as employees. It shows commitment to safety and that it extends to them. During the walk-around, compliance officers may point out some apparent violations that can be corrected immediately. While the law requires that these hazards must still be cited, prompt correction is a sign of good faith on the part of the employer and may prevent a citation. Compliance officers try to minimize work interruptions during the inspection and will keep confidential any trade secrets that they observe. The inspector may be using equipment to measure noise, dust fumes, or other hazardous exposures. Watch these tests. If you do not understand what the inspector is doing, ask. Request summaries of the sampling results, which OSHA must provide to the requesting party as soon as practicable. Take notes. Once the walk-around is complete, the compliance officer will begin interviews. Certain employees may be selected for this one-on-one interview with the compliance officer. Identify a private area that can be used for these interviews. Usually this area is in the same location as the opening and closing conference. The questions will be simple, covering topics such as the type of training provided, and employees should answer any questions truthfully. If the selected employee is too busy or in the middle of a crucial part of work, let the compliance officer know when the employee will be free. Inspectors don't want to unduly impede production. Their goal is to get the information they need and move along. Most conversations between employees and compliance officers take no longer than 10 to 15 minutes. After the inspection and interviews are complete, there will be a closing conference. The closing conference may immediately follow after a very simple inspection or may follow a major inspection by several weeks. During the closing conference, the compliance officer will discuss the findings. The compliance officer will then discuss possible courses of action the employer may take. One of these courses of action is an informal conference with OSHA to contest citations and propose penalties. The compliance officer will also discuss apparent violations, ways to correct hazards, deadlines, and possible fines. A second closing conference may be held if needed information, such as sampling results, was not initially available. OSHA has 6 months after the closing conference to file citations, which will arrive by certified mail. Always take notes and record the closing conference. When an inspector finds violations of OSHA standards or serious hazards, OSHA may issue citations and fines. OSHA must issue a citation and propose penalty within 6 months of the violation's occurrence. Citations describe OSHA requirements allegedly violated, list any proposed penalties, and give a deadline for correcting the alleged hazards. Violations are categorized as willful, serious, other than serious, de minimis, failure to abate, and repeated. In settling a penalty, OSHA has a policy of reducing penalties for small employers and those acting in good faith. For serious violations, OSHA may also reduce the proposed penalty based on the gravity of the alleged violation. No good faith adjustments will be made for alleged willful violations. OSHA may choose to issue citations and financial penalties to the employer for violating specific OSHA standards or regulations. OSHA may also issue citations and penalties for violating the General Duty Clause if there is no standard or regulation relating to the hazard or issue.